Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Alamos 10 to the Sky. Today is going to be pretty exciting because I wanted to take the time to really dive deep into the fission reactor and the industrial turbine from Mechanism. We're going to have a little bit of nerd talk. We're going to actually do math, and I'm going to explain to you how the turbine vents and condensers actually work. To be able to recirculate your water between your fission reactor and your industrial turbine. That way you don't have to have an infinite water source feeding into it and trashing the steam, even though that's the easiest way to go about it. But to actually understand how the setup is meant to work. The reason why I wanted to do that is, one, there aren't a lot of resources out there for it. So I think it would be nice to just kind of add to that repertoire. And hopefully if somebody wants to set it up that way, they will have a resource available. And also, we don't have an infinite water source like the sink in Stone Block 4, which I'm planning on playing in the future. So I did want to do a little bit of research and messing around with that. So I'm kind of prepared for that. Oh, come on, Rain. But as you can see, we have... I've been doing a little bit of decorating off camera as well. So I've got a little bit of like a construction fence thing around this construction area. And I went ahead and changed our crane a little bit. So I'm still messing around with it. I can get this thing to spin around 360 degrees and you can move this rope up and down manually. But I'm basically trying to figure out a way. Ideally, at some point, I'd love to have controls in there where we can like sit in a chair and move this side to side, move the rope up and down, and also even like maybe slide this rope pulley up and down the whatever this is called. Hopefully without adding too much bulk to this. So I'll keep exploring that. But anyways, let's jump into the episode for today. This is the room we're going to be going into. You can see I outlined the area into 4 different 11 by 11 setups. You can make it bigger. I think 11 by 11 is a little bit more manageable and still possible to cool with water. If you take your fission reactor a little bit, if you make it a little bit too big, you're going to have to switch to using sodium to cool it because sodium has a 10-to-1 ratio for cooling it versus water. So it'll be 10 times more efficient, but then you would have to set up a boiler in between your fission reactor and your turbine. So it would add another giant multi-block that I don't want to deal with. So anyways, let's get started. So in the last episode, we set up our fissile fuel production with Super Factory Manager, and you guys can see, check out that episode if you don't know how to set that up. Super Factory Manager makes it really nice and simple. But what I'm going to do is over here, we're going to stock fissile fuel in our interface because we're storing it in a chemical cell in our applied energetics system. So I'm going to stock it here and we can feed our reactor just from here. So let's see what it takes to build our reactor. I am going to use a construction stick because this will make it easier. Put the reactor casings in my offhand, and this area is already outlined in an 11 by 11, and that's going to be our base. So we have our base, and then with the reactor casing, I basically want to go up, again, 11 blocks. You can go taller, but I've just chosen to do an 11 by 11. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And then we're just going to carry this all the way through in the corners. All right. And once you have that, we can get started making the fuel rod assemblies. This goes in a checkerboard pattern in the middle, so I like to do a little X like this from corner to corner, and then we can fill in these areas pretty quickly and easily. So once you have that all filled in, you can use your construction stick and then go through and build these guys all the way up. That one is missing because I was standing in the middle of it. Make sure you have it all building up. Otherwise, your thing's not going to form and you're going to have to break it open and see which one on the inside is missing. But if you make the exact amounts of items that I show on screen that you need to build this, then you can kind of use that as a check. So if you finish building your reactor and you have like 5 fission fuel assemblies left over, then you're going to know that, hey, there's some missing in here and that's why it's not forming. So I would recommend doing that. And then on top, we're going to put these control rod assemblies, which is going to be the last layer, just like that. So again, I used all of those. And then the very, very top, we're going to fill in with these reactor casings, just like the bottom. Oops, that's why. I forgot to put my construction stick on left-right mode. If you want to avoid building down the sides like that, you can open up the settings for your construction stick and then put the restriction on left and right. So now it's only going to build left and right, and it's not going to build up and down. You can see we have a few missing here. That's because we're not actually going to be, we're not going to have all of these set to the casings because we have things like our logic adapters that we need to put in. I'm going to put that in at the bottom over here. So we can go down here, and I guess I'll just break away all this concrete so we have access to it. And somewhere over here, for example, how about here? We need 4 logic adapters. And these logic adapters are going to be used to basically turn off our reactor in the event of an emergency. And we're going to set these up with, I can't do it right now. We have to finish building our reactor first. So let's come back to that. Come on, get through the hole. Now we can fill in these guys. So now top and the bottom and the corners are all set. We need to put the glass around in a ring. Make sure it's reactor glass, and make sure it's reactor glass from mechanism and not from like extreme reactors or something. That's not going to work. So once you build your first row like that, you can use your construction stick and take it all the way up. Again, this is going to leave a few holes because we need to put in the ports. So let's start from this corner over here. We're going to put a port that is going to be, let's also grab our configurator so we can kind of fix this as we go. So there's one port. This is going to be our coolant output. So when our reactor makes steam, it's going to be output from here, and we can just output it directly to our turbine over here. On the side over here, I'm going to put an input, which is where we can feed it water to basically get it going for the first time, and also for emergency reasons, in case we run out of water or something goes wrong with our turbine or whatever, then we can flood it with water to prevent it from having a meltdown. And we also need one that I will put over here. This is going to be our input for fissile fuel. And then just right next to that, I'll put the output for nuclear waste. So that is going to be it. We do need to finish glass. Oop. So we got 1, 2. Oh, I need one more. Ching. And that should have formed. What are we missing? Another piece of glass over here. Those guys could be sneaky. So there you go. Now you can see that the GUI is active and can, look into it. So let's go ahead and get this set up to run. The first thing we're going to want to do is basically feed it water to get it going. And I'm going to do that over here with Super Factory Manager. So let's grab a thing. Now, this isn't going to be Super Factory Manager by default, isn't going to be fast enough to keep it fed with water as it's running, I don't think. But this is just going to be for startup and also for emergency reasons. So that is going to be in there. I'm going to put a redstone lamp next to it. And this is going to basically let us know when our manager is running because I'm going to put redstone control in it. We are going to need a sink to get the water from also. So let's go down here. I'll put the sink below this guy. And we need a disk. Disk will go in there, and we'll call this fissile or fission emergency water. We're going to do every 20 ticks do input fluid, which is the water, from the sink, and we're going to output that fluid to water. We'll go fission water port, and we'll just say west side, I guess, because this is a mechanism machine and all mechanism machines need that. I do want to control this with redstone. So what I'm going to do is over here, say if, put an if statement. If redstone is greater than 0, then I want to do this. And we can highlight this and press tab to indent it. And we also need another end after the if statement. So this block of code in between the then and the end is only going to run if our manager is receiving a redstone signal greater than 0. So any kind of redstone signal it receives, it's going to execute this code. Okay, and we're going to save that. Now we need to do our labels. So we want to tag the sink as well as the port. So you see when I do that, it's actually not inputting anything, but if I take a button, for example, and I just click it once, you can see it fills the entire thing up. So that button can be used to just kind of kickstart this thing. And my plan is eventually, with all this redstone control, I am going to set up a screen from RF tools somewhere in the front over here, and we'll be able to control all of our multi-plugs with that to like turn it on and off and do all that kind of stuff. So let's now go ahead and deal with this logic. And now that we can access these. So these logic adapters can output a redstone signal if the reactor has high temperature, critical waste level, critical damage, or insufficient fuel. And that's why we have 4, because there's 4 different triggers for it. So the first one we're going to select on high temp. The next one will be critical waste level. The one after that will be damage critical, and the one is insufficient fuel. So right now, our reactor has insufficient fuel, which means these guys should be outputting a redstone signal. And I'm going to use redstone wires from red alloy wire from Mored, because these guys can go on the ceiling and it's nice. So you can see as soon as I put it on this one, that's for insufficient fuel, this whole thing is lit up. So it's powered right now, which means there's an issue with our reactor and we want our reactor to turn off. So as soon as any one of these turns on, the whole line will go red. So it's kind of like an OR gate without having to need an OR gate, because, you know, the power travels through the wire. And we're going to want it to go into here for activation. And this guy says, redstone signal absent, provide 1 to activate. That means if I give it a redstone signal, it's going to turn on the reactor. But that's the opposite of what we want to do, because obviously these guys are outputting a redstone signal if something is wrong. So I'm going to invert this guy. And that means when we do this, right now it's powered. So it says redstone signal present, remove to activate. So that means our reactor won't turn on because we don't have sufficient fuel. So it's going to keep it off. Now, when we feed it fuel, I'm going to add a second manager over here to just because this code for the fissile fuel is already kind of long, and I think it'll be better to keep it separate. But it's going to have access to all of those machines that are connected. If I grab my network tool, you can see this manager is connected to all of those things, which includes the interface. And if I have this manager connected to this manager, it also is connected to all of these cables going around, which basically means you can have multiple managers on your network. That's no problem. So we're going to have that, and then we just want to bring that into over there and set up our code. So let's go ahead and use another one of these guys, and I'm going to say this one will be name fissile fission fuel supply. You don't have to name it. What is... That's so weird. Okay, I don't know what that noise is. All right, every 20 ticks due, oops, we are going to input chemical, and I'm going to filter it to fissile fuel just in case from the interface. Do you guys remember we stocked fissile fuel inside of the interface? So this is going to pick that up, and we're going to output that chemical. Since this is already filtered, this is the only thing Super Factory Manager is picking up, so I don't have to specify it here again, because this is the only possibility that it can happen. And we're going to output that to Fission Fuel port, and we'll say top side. If I do each side, will it fill a little bit faster? Because right now we only have 64 buckets stored in there. And if you take a look at your reactor, it has a large tank. Like the water, we have 133 million millibuckets. So that's 133,000 buckets of water that's in here. So the tanks are relatively large. And it's going to take a while for it to fill up all of those. So I'm going to try doing each side, and hopefully it'll be 6 times as fast. The interface we need to label. Oops. Switching. And then also the fission fuel port. And as soon as I push that in, you can see this guy actually has started working. So let's turn it off for now, because I don't want that to work. But we also want to connect this to our manager. And I wonder if that being powered is also going to power the manager. Is that going to work? Let's try it out. If I do this as 328, so if you didn't know, you set the size of your reactor determines the maximum burn rate of your fissile fuel, but you get to control it from in here. So when you turn it on and it's like literally producing nothing, like that was on for a bit and it only produced 9 millibuckets, that's because your burn rate is by default set to 0.1 millibuckets per tick. So let's go 328, which is going to be the maximum burn rate for our sized reactor. And this is going to get way hotter and it's going to produce way more. So it'll be way more finicky. And if I activate this, our water is going to drain very, very quickly and we're going to start sustaining damage. I'm basically just making sure that this is going to work and we're going to get water back in there. So I'm going to press activate. You can see that turns off, and every 20 ticks, this fills up. So let's scram it because we're starting to sustain just a little bit of damage. But I can see we've already produced a lot of steam. And every time our water ran out, every 20 ticks, our Super Factory Manager would flood this back up with more water. And then the cycle continues, right? Because when this is full, our safety turns off and then that turns back on. So I think this will be good for now. It would be good if there was some sort of a delay. Or if there was a way that this would just turn off and not constantly turn back on. That would also be cool, but we'll deal with that later. So we know our safety is working. If we run out of coolant or fuel or whatever, it's going to stop working and flood our fission reactor with water. But let's press the button once more to fill it back up with water. And that didn't, for some reason, do all of it. It should be able to do all of it because both of these can accept maximum integers per tick. But anyways, so you can see if you just leave it, your damage is going to go down over time. That is no problem. And we know our fission reactor is working now, even though we can't leave it running because we need to be able to recirculate that water. And again, if you were doing this, if you're playing on a mod pack that has EvilCraft, right? So you can search up EvilCraft. Obviously this one doesn't, but EvilCraft has the eternal water block that will basically automatically output maximum integer values of water per tick. So you literally just put your EvilCraft water block thing against your reactor port and it will keep it filled forever. The other thing is using integrated dynamics with the sink. So that can also do maximum integer thing. And I'll show you that really quickly. You need a logic cable and you need a fluid interface. And you also need a fluid exporter or an importer, both will work, and a variable card. Okay, so once you have that, we're going to need more. Basically, the way that works is, let's grab a tank just so we can show it off over here. We're going to put the fluid interface on our sink. So if you look at our sink, it's 2.14 million buckets of water. So that's maximum integer values. When we put our interface in here, our integrated dynamics network basically has access to all of this water, right? So there's our logic cable. And then what we want to do is from that network, we want to export the water into this tank, which I can put over here because we have to put it on the bottom. So the fluid exporter will go over there. I need another logic cable to connect those two together. And then if you go to this exporter and under export all fluids from the system, if you put your variable card in there, it's going to output water, but you can see it's only doing 1,000 at a time. So let's take this out. And basically we want to click on the settings, the properties over here, and not the channel, but if you go over to the transfer rate, fluid transfer rate, we can set this up. And a lot of people say or think that the maximum is just doing a bunch of 9s and then just subtracting 1. So this you can see as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's 9 nines, 9 digits. But actually, the biggest number you can put in here is the maximum 32-bit integer value, which is that 2.1 billion number. So this one, see, it's 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3. This is 999 million. If I put the 2.147, blah, 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 this number, this is the maximum 32-bit integer value. You can see this is more than double what the other rate was. Not that it matters anyways, but this is the actual maximum you can put in here, the maximum integer value. And to prove that to you, if I change this to 8, you can see that it's no longer working. But if we do 7, you can see it is working. And if we do all 9s, 9 9s, you can see this is less than half the other value because the other one has 10 digits. This one has 9 digits. And if I do add a 0 at the end and change this first 9 to a 2, or sorry, a 1, you can see this is now 10 digits. So this is basically a billion more than it. Anyways, but you set your value to the maximum integer value, and now it's not going to be 1,000 per tick. It's going to fill this up all in one tick. So as soon as I put the variable card in there, you can see this is full. So that's how you would do maximum water transfer with integrated dynamics. But we're not going to be using that because we want to recirculate our water with our turbine, which means now that this is all set up, and I just realized I made a mistake because I need to add one more port up here for putting the water back in. But anyways, let's build our turbine. Alrighty, so here's everything we're going to need to set up our turbine, and a very similar process. I'm going to set this up and explain what each part of the turbine does, and then we'll go into why I have that number of things, because I think it'll make more sense to talk about the math once you can actually see it happening. So anyways, because this is 11 by 11, I also wanted to build an 11 by 11 turbine just so it fits nicely in this room. We're going to start with the casings on the bottom. Same exact thing, just like that. And for this one, we're actually going to have to go up basically all the way up to the ceiling because we are going to require all of that room. It says 15, but I don't believe it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So this is 16 blocks tall. This measuring tape sucks. I hate it. It never gives you the right value, but this is 11 by 11 by 16. Okay, so here is the frame that we have it. In the exact center, we're going to put these rotors, and I have 4 of them. On the rotors, we're going to put blades, and you can put 2 blades per rotor. So however many rotors you have, let's say we have 4 rotors, that means we're going to need 8 blades that we put on there. Directly on top of the rotor, you get your rotational complex. And all the way, or I guess above the rotational complex, we're going to put the electromagnetic coil. I'm only putting 1 in this case because the entire purpose of our turbine in this case is to recirculate the water for our fission reactor and not to produce power. So my numbers are optimized for recirculating water and not for producing power. That's why we're only going to use 1 magnetic coil. But if you did have more magnetic coils, they have to be attached to each other. So you can't have like one here and then a few blocks over another one. They all have to be attached. And then all the way around your rotational complex, we're going to put these pressure dispensers. If you read the tooltips on this guy, you can see that it's used to disperse steam throughout the multi-block structure. This basically creates your steam tank. And I will show you what that is in just a second. Unfortunately, these guys, you can't use the stick to place for some reason. So we're going to have to do it by hand. You might be able to use the building gadget. I don't remember if you can or not. I think you can, but we're going to fill in this entire level with these pressure dispensers. And directly above, you can only have 1 layer of these pressure dispensers. So below the pressure dispensers is going to be your steam tank. And based on the size of this area is going to determine the size of how much steam your turbine can hold. If I brought this one down, like let's say we got rid of a rotor and brought this 1 layer down, the size of our steam tank would be smaller. So this is kind of what we need. And if we needed it to larger, we could just go either up more or down more, up to 18 blocks height. So we can make a bigger steam tank, for example. Okay, anyways, then we have these saturating condensers that is going to go on top of our thing over here. And you can have multiple layers of these guys on top. So I'm going to put 2 full layers of it, which I don't think actually is necessary. We'll talk about the numbers in a second. And then we have these turbine vents that I'm going to put fully on the top. These turbine vents can only go above your rotational complex, so you can't put it down here, and they can only go on the walls of it. So the corners, which are where all of these casings are, can be casings, but then these turbine vents, which basically it's a turbine casing with an integrated vent for the release of steam. That basically just means how much steam is allowed to flow through your reactor. So when you're moving the water back, you're going to be pulling it from these vents. So what I'm going to do is, you can see this one again is going to build off the sides, but we don't want that. So we're going to turn this to left-right mode and fill in the entire top. And then, oh, actually I was wrong. We do want to put it on the other sides too. So all of this we're going to put with these guys. And over here too. And then let's make it unrestricted, and then we can keep going up all the way. And we're just going to leave this whole area blank. If you ever make a mistake like that with your construction stick, there is an undo, but it works a little bit funky. So if we go under keybinds category construction sticks, you can see my undo operation is Shift U. But if I press Shift U, nothing happens. You have to hold down Shift U and look at the block you just placed and right click again. So that just removed it. But if I look at like this side over here and hold U and right click, nothing happens. You have to be looking at the specific thing you just placed for it to undo it. Otherwise it won't work. But for some reason it made the noise, but it still didn't work. Ah, you can't undo that part, unfortunately. But it's not too bad. All right, let's finish these vents. And now we basically need to set up our valves. So let's say these valves is for the transfer of energy and steam. So the steam input is going to be this guy. The energy output I will put over here, and I'll just void for now. So let's grab a trash can. And we'll put this over here, and this is just going to void all the power that we're producing from this. You can, instead of doing a trash can, just put a flex point or plug and it'll go into your system. But we need this to constantly run. So I just want to void it. Then we need structural glass and not reactor glass. So the fission reactor gets reactor glass. This guy gets structural glass. Again, we're going to do one layer at the bottom. And instead of glass, this can be the turbine casings as well, but obviously the glass is going to look much better. And oh, this one we can't build up like the other one. All right, and as soon as I place the last glass, you can see our structure has formed. Our capacity is 30.1 million millibuckets, which means that's how much steam we can keep in there. Our maximum flow, which is how much steam can come into it and how much water can flow out of it, is 19.1 million millibuckets. So one thing to watch out for is your fission reactor is going to go through a lot of water as well as steam, like how much it's producing. It's going to be producing a ton per tick. This particular size of reactor, we want to see the heating rate, which I wonder if we can see. No, it's just going to turn off. Let's refill it. So this part that's outputting the coolant, which is the steam, we need to get it into our turbine through this port. Ideally, you would put these guys right next to each other so this port directly outputs to this valve. The reason for that is because, like I said, you produce a ton of steam. Like, look, this one has over 1 billion millibuckets of steam, and your pressure pipes from mechanism are not going to be able to support that. So your mechanical pipes, look, this one, the pump rate is only 32,000 millibuckets. And our burn rate for this reactor, I was doing some testing, is actually over 18 million. So divide that by 32,000, like let's say just 18 million divided by the 32,000. That means we would need 563 of these mechanical pipes set to be able to support the flow rate from this port to this valve. And that's going to cause a ton of lag because, 500 of those cables, they're all block entities and it's going to cause a ton of lag. So ideally you would put it directly right next to it. You could use something like integrated dynamics. You remember integrated dynamics has the maximum integer transfer rate. You can also use something new, actually, which is really funny, is SFM now has a tunneled factory manager, and this was introduced in the, I don't know if it was the 4.27 or the 4.28 update, but basically what this guy does is it passes the, let me grab a hopper and some cobblestone. It basically just passes the block capabilities through the manager. So if we have a chest over here and a hopper feeding into this manager, even without a program or anything, we can put in the cobblestone in here, and this factory manager is gonna basically just pass through the capabilities of this hopper through itself into this chest. So you can see that's working. If I have a a chest, another chest set up over here. Obviously, this chest doesn't have any pushing capabilities, so it's not going to move. It's not going to move any cobblestone through it. So it does have to be something that's actively pushing, and it doesn't work on any other side. It only does the opposite side. So if I put cobblestone here, you can see it doesn't go into this chest because it only passes to the opposite side. But if I put one here, then it's going to go over there. If I wanted to put it in this chest, I would have to put the hopper over here, and then you can see it's going in here. So that's how the tunneled factory manager works, and it has no limit. So what we can do is use our stupid thing. We can use our super factory manager, the tunneled manager, to put it over here. And look, the steam's going in here, and this guy's producing power that's voiding and you know, like that. And now if we take a look up here with these turbine vents, you can see that it's full of water that we need to get back into our fission reactor, which means we need another port up here. The problem is I ran this for a while and it has nuclear waste in it that's radioactive. So if I break a glass to add a port up here, it's going to leak radiation, and that's going to be no bueno. So I do need to fix that for a second. What I'm going to do is I'm going to break this manager block because I have this port that I have access to, and I can put a waste barrel over here off to the side, because if I put it in front of it, I'm going to block it, because you're not going to be able to break this waste barrel until it's fully empty. And we can just use our mechanism. I guess we could just use Super Factory Manager to do that. Let's convert this. Use the configurator. And you know what? I'm going to just do it down here. So we already have access to this waste port. So I will put this barrel over here, and with this manager, oops, what we can do is just create another every 20 ticks do, and we're going to input the chemical from the waste port, and I'll say bottom side, and we're going to output that chemical to the waste barrel, and I'll say top side for that guy. The waste barrel can only accept things from the bottom and the top, I'm pretty sure. So if you do any other side, it's not going to work. Let's use our label gun. And now if we take a look at this, you see we have 22,000 millibuckets of nuclear waste. This guy, I believe, can hold, I forget how much actually. But we're going to pull the labels from that. There's the waste port. Here's the waste barrel. We push that back in. You can see now this is empty. So there's no more radioactive material inside of our fission reactor. It went inside of this waste barrel that is slowly decaying. So you can see it slowly. I think it's 2 millibuckets every 10 ticks, which is not the default value. It was altered. It was altered by the Aldemont's team for this pack. So now that that waste is there safely, and there's no more waste material, no more radiation inside of our fission reactor, we can break it open and basically put a port over here. So I'm going to go up to this very top part, and we're going to grab another one of these ports, and I'll put that over here. And this is going to be the input port, which is going to come from our vent. And again, these vents are going to automatically output. So I'll just put another Super Factory Manager cable here, and that is going to push the water back into here. So theoretically now, with this exact setup, if I activate this, you can see the water is no longer going down. I don't want to get rid of the waste though, so let's go ahead and turn that off by just removing that part, and shift right click to just get rid of those labels that are unused. And now when I turn this on, you can see we're not inputting water anymore because this light is turned off, right? And I can even take this out, right? So you can see even with that taken out, the water is staying consistent. This guy has this much steam, our flow rate. So this system works now in a closed loop system. at the maximum burn rate of our 11 by 11 reactor at 328. And it's able to keep itself fed with water and keep itself cooled. So let's go ahead and figure out what exactly is going on. And this is where the nerd talk begins, and we're going to start doing some math. So we have the heating rate, which is basically the rate at which the coolant is converted into the heated coolant tank. In our case, it's water, but it can also be sodium. In the case of water, we're heating 18.365997 million millibuckets per tick. That basically means we're converting 18.3, and we'll call it 366, 18.366 million millibuckets of water is converted into steam every single tick. Okay, so that is our baseline number, and that means that's how much water we're going to be losing from our fission reactor, and that's going to be how much water we need to be pumping into our fission reactor to keep it from losing water, right? Now let's take a look at our turbine, and you can see these turbine vents are what controls how much water flows, or how much steam is converted back into water and pushing that out. And each one of these vents in this particular mod pack, the numbers were tweaked. So in this particular mod pack, each one is 43,478.262 millibuckets per tick. A really, really random number. I don't know why they chose that, but that's the number. So if we take 18,366,000 and we divide that by 43,478.262, that gives us 422.4 turbine vents that we would need to support enough water flow back into our reactor to be able to keep this going. Now, we're going to have to round that up to 423. So we need at least 423 turbine vents. And if you take a look at the top of the vent, or the top of our turbine, we have a 9x9 area. So that's 81 vents right there that we have. So 423 minus 81 gives us 342 more vents that we need to put in there. And each row, we have 9 times 4 on the sides. So it's 36 turbine vents per row that we have. So we take the 342, which is the remainder after subtracting the 81 from the top, and we divide that by 36, which is how many vents we get every single layer. And that gives us 9.5. So that means we need 10 layers of these turbine vents. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we need 10 layers of these turbine vents to be able to keep up with the 18.3 million burn rate. And if we take a look inside of our vent, you can see the max flow rate is 19.1 million, because you remember it was 9.5 and we rounded up. So we're getting a little bit more headroom in here. So that is how many vents that you need for that flow rate. And then you also, so that's for the steam, but the condensers on the inside, these guys, the saturating condensers, is what converts that steam back into water. And you're going to need enough of that as well. The default is 64,000 millibuckets per tick for those, but in this mod pack, it's 256,000 millibuckets per tick. So again, we take that same number, the 18,366,000, which is how much steam we're producing per tick, and we divide that by the 256,000 millibuckets per tick of transfer from steam to water each saturating condenser gives us, and we get 71.7. So basically we need at least 72 saturating condensers inside of our turbine to be able to convert enough steam into that. I put in 2 layers, which I guess is not necessary because each layer is a 9x9, so it'll give us 81. So watch, I can delete one of these layers. And that should still be sufficient for our needs. Because this one layer is a 9x9 plus, or sorry, minus 1 in the middle. So it's basically going to give us 80 saturating condensers. So that should be enough still. So let's close, let's try to sneak into this hole. I always have issues with this. Let's just do that. Oh my God. I always complain about this Paxel. I'm going to do something about it, I promise you guys. Why do I have one left over? Is it because we put... Oh my... Where did I break this? Here. There we go. Okay. So you can see, even with that one layer, oh, we're having issues. Why are we... So steam is not converting fast enough. Let's fill this back up with water. Why is this not filling up with water anymore? Because we took the disc out. Very smart of us. Interesting. Very, very interesting. So for some reason, maybe the math is wrong on the, maybe the 256,000 that's stated on the wiki is incorrect. I did a bunch of testing on this, so it's possible there is a good reason why I had that many saturating condensers. I would assume the only thing that I can think of at the moment is that the numbers on the wiki are incorrect. So let's grab the rest of our saturating condensers to fill in this layer as well. And now that that is full, you can see we're back up and running, and I can just refill that last little bit. Okay. So basically what you would do is you would set up whatever size reactor you want, and you can't go too big. If you go too big, water will not be sufficient. In this pack, it's possible to do an 11 by 11 with water cooling in a closed loop like this, because the numbers were buffed a little bit for our turbine, how fast this can produce water. So then you take and you look at your heating rate, the 18.365 to 66 million millibuckets per tick. That burning rate is how much coolant we're converting into heated coolant per tick. So we're using 18.366 million millibuckets of water, converting it into steam. Then we're pumping that steam, 18 million steam per tick, into here. Now, your steam tank needs to be large enough, that's the capacity, to be able to take all of that per tick, because otherwise you're going to have leftover, and it's not going to be able to cycle that through. So your capacity needs to be at least as big as your maximum flow rate. Otherwise, you're not going to have enough room to cycle the water and the steam through. The way you get larger capacity is by having a larger steam tank, which is this area underneath your, what are those things called? Underneath your pressure dispensers. So you can have one layer of pressure dispensers at your coil above your rotors, and the size of this like empty room with a turbine is the size of your steam tank. So the larger this is, the larger your capacity will be. I have enough headroom where I could probably make this smaller, but this is just, I just went all the way up to the ceiling because it made sense. Okay. Then your maximum flow rate is determined by the number of turbine vents that you have. So you take your maximum amount of water and steam that you need to convert per tick, which is our 18.366 million. You divide that number by how much each turbine vent can support, which in our case is the really ugly 43,478 and 262 millibuckets per tick per vent. So when you divide those numbers together, that basically tells you need 422 point some decimal number amount of vents. We round that up to 423 vents. Then you take that number, you subtract 81 from the top because we have a 9x9 area on the top, and then you figure out how many fits per row, and then you can divide that by the remainder after you subtract 81, which gives you how many rows of these turbine vents you're going to need. Once you have that set up, you can kind of determine the size of your tank, as long as it's big enough to be, as long as your capacity is larger than your max flow, then you're going to be fine. Once all of that is set up, you're going to have to figure out how many condensers you need. The number for ours, the wiki for this seems to be a little wrong. So I don't know. I can double check that and make sure, but by default, it's going to be 64,000 millibuckets per tick. For us, the wiki says 256, but obviously that's not the case. So maybe it's 128, and that's why I need 2 layers of it. So we have 2 layers of the saturating condensers. What the saturating condensers do is they convert the steam to water, basically. So you have 18 million millibuckets of steam that comes in. The saturating condensers need to be able to convert that to water. And then your turbine vents need to be able to supply the flow back to your reactor. So you need enough vents to supply it back. You need enough saturating condensers to convert the steam back into water. You need to have a large enough steam tank to accept all of the steam per tick that your fission reactor is producing. And then you can cycle it back. And the pipes in between need to be able to support enough throughput to do that. I would recommend just building these next to each other because the ports will auto output. But in this case, we're using the tunnel superfactory manager because it just directly passes the capabilities of the block next to it to the opposite side of the block. And you can have multiple of these. Like if you're 10 blocks away, you can put 10 of these superfactory manager things next to each other, and it'll pass the capabilities all the way through. Okay, so that is how we can have this activated. Now it's going to be running at our maximum burn rate, 328 millibuckets per tick. We're using absolutely no extra water from there. This is just to get it started, to initially fill it up, and for emergency reasons, for whatever, like let's say I break this open and it runs out, you can see every time this turns on, it's filling our thing with water, just to keep it cooled. So then I can turn it off. If you left it like that, unfortunately, it's going to continue causing problems. Like it's going to continue receiving damage, but I'll figure out a better way. The reason for that is because this runs every 20 ticks instead of every tick. So it can't actually keep up with how much water this is using. But when we put this back on, we can fill this tank. And when we activate it, you can see it's not working. And this is just to signal us. So every time this redstone lamp is on, it just means that we're pumping water into it. Okay. That was a lot in the end. So hopefully, I don't know how to better organize this. Hopefully I did a good enough job. And this guy is where the power would be coming in. So in this setup, we're actually producing, even though this is optimized for the water flow, we're still producing 10.5 million FE per tick. So you could very easily, just put a flex plug in here to put it into your system. Let me see if I'm missing anything before I let you guys go. We did also, I guess I can touch up on this, on the safety system we did. So we have these ports. Anytime one of them triggers, this whole line will go red, which triggers our superfactory manager to output water into the port. We could put some kind of a delay timer thing on here. So every time this ticks, like let's say for the next 5 seconds or 10 seconds or whatever, it'll keep our manager going. So if you do something like that, every time this ticks, it'll keep it going for that long. But unfortunately, I don't know if there's a way to, we would have to do some kind of logic over here. Maybe we can use a microchip where if this triggers, it just shuts down the system until you start it back up. But if we let this go for a little bit longer, if our waste tank gets full, then we'll see how this actually works, because our waste tank is going to stay full. It's not going to disappear all of a sudden. So that whichever one of these that's outputting the waste, insufficient fuel, critical damage, critical waste level. So when this one triggers, when our waste tank is full, it's not going to go down until we clear it, right? So then it's just going to stay turned off. But even then, it's going to, our superfactory manager is going to run to flood this with water. So anyways, I hope that makes sense. This is possible in this mod pack because those numbers were buffed for how much the turbine vent. So by default, the turbine vent only does 16,000 millibuckets. In this case, it's 43.5 thousand millibuckets approximately. So it's close to 3 times as much for the turbine vent. Otherwise, in a mod pack that has the default values, you're going to have to do a sodium cooled fission reactor and run the sodium into a boiler. And then the boiler has steam running into your turbine, and then the cooled sodium will go back into, it's basically a moderator in between. So the sodium is going to be flowing between your reactor and the boiler, and then the steam and the water is going to be flowing between your boiler again and your turbine. So that's how those two connect. And the sodium is much more efficient at keeping your reactor cooled. That's why you can build a bigger one. I hope that makes sense. I'm going to start planning my screen controls and everything over here. And obviously we're going to have to do a few more things because we need our fusion reactor still. We need our SPS still. So those guys will all be controlled from that screen as well. I'll try to figure out how I want to handle that in the future. But I think that's enough nerd talk for this episode. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you learned something new. Let me know if this was helpful or if it was way more confusing than it needed to be. But hopefully you guys understand how this works now, so you can use it for your own builds. Anyways, thank you. I will see you in the next one.